Fiona Loakes is an award-winning author, with 26 published novels under her belt. She began her career as Fiona Harper, writing uplifting romantic stories for Harlequin Mills and Boon, then moved on to writing rom-coms and women's fiction for HarperCollins. So far in her career, Fiona has won numerous awards, sold more than 2 million books worldwide, and has chalked up a #1 Kindle bestseller. Her next novel, The Last Goodbye, will be the first publication under her new pen name of Fiona Loakes. Fiona makes her home in Bromley, UK, and is married with 2 daughters. Please welcome Fiona Loakes to Writing to Inspire 2020, your next level.
I didn't when I started, and you then submit your book to a publisher and they decide whether they would like to publish it or not, and if they do, they offer you a contract. Now you get a percentage of the money from the book sold. It's not a lot. I think my first contract was something like 6% of cover price, and that's pretty standard because your publisher pays for absolutely everything else. They pay for the editor, they pay for the copy editor, they pay for the cover designer, they pay for formatting for the book to be printed, they market it, they sort out distribution so it goes into shops and it goes online. So they absorb a lot of the costs, and then they have a lot of the returns. The advantages of being traditionally published, well, you don't, your publisher does that for you, so you just have to concentrate on writing the books. And if you do well and you get a publisher who wants to push you, you can hit bestseller lists, you can have a book that does really, really well. The downside is you don't always have a lot of control, or as much control as if you publish yourself independently. So I am consulted about my cover designs nowadays, wasn't in the past, but at the end of the day, the publisher is going to do what they think is going to work best. So if you're somebody who likes to have your finger in the pie and control everything, then traditional publishing might be quite frustrating. The opposite, or the other arm you can go down, is to self-publish, or what's been called independent publishing, because for some reason for a long time self-publishing was really looked down on, and it's so not the case anymore. I know some really, really successful or independently published authors, I mean big names, who earn 7 figures a year, much more than I do, and they are just powerhouses, but they basically have had to become their own publishing house. So you're the writer, you're the publisher, you hire your editor, you hire your cover designer, you design your marketing strategy. That's all down to you. The benefits are that you take home a much bigger cut of the pie when it comes to money, but the downside is you've got all the work to do. So and I don't think and there are some authors who do a bit of both, and they're called hybrid authors. So they might do some, fiction traditionally published, they might do non-fiction that they publish themselves, or a mix. And I think both route is really valid, and actually it's very exciting at the moment with independent publishing, because if you've got a genre that maybe publishers don't want to take a risk on because they're a bit wary about it, then independent publishing can be great, because you can find your niche online without a publisher having to take a risk on you. And there's a big audience out there who really love to read books, and it's just about finding your audience. So that's the difference. So I've always gone down the traditional publishing route, mainly because independent publishing as it is now just didn't exist when I started. It really was, ebooks were only just starting to become, not every publisher was publishing their books as ebooks when I started. So a lot has changed in 15 years. And I decided that I would kind of try and get my toe in the door a certain way, and then see where my career took me. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and tell you a little bit about it. There's definitely been ups and downs. I remember saying, I had to give a talk at, I won an award for my first book, and I had to give a speech which terrified me completely the next year, to pass the same award on to the next recipient. And they made me do a speech, and I remember this image from it that was saying that he'd been a roller coaster first year of being a published author, and I still stand by that analogy, because I've now been published. Well, I got my first publishing contract in November 2015, so it'll be 15 years this year. And there are definitely huge highs and terrible lows. There are times where you think you know you're going one way, and then suddenly the industry or the world shifts, and suddenly you're upside down, back to front, have no idea what's happening with your career. Sometimes I'm like just hanging on with my white knuckles, screaming, and other times you feel like you're flying and life is amazing. Oh my goodness, this is where I always wanted to be. So, and it all gets mixed in there. It's kind of exhilarating, it's surprising, it's sometimes demoralizing, but it's thrilling. And I think a lot of people think that once you sign your first publishing contract, you're in, that's it. Unfortunately, I have to say that no, the journey continues after you get published. And I'm going to share some of that with you, to just see, hope to let you see that even if you meet those setbacks and roadblocks, that God can use those, and God can really sort of, sometimes the times where I've got stuck are the times where God's then used that to promote me to the next level. I think you really need to develop the fruit of the Spirit in your life, if you're going to be an author or a writer of some kind, because the one thing you definitely need a lot of is patience, particularly if you're going to do traditional publishing. I am always waiting for somebody to do something. If you send your book to an agent, you then have to wait. We're not talking days or weeks, it's often months you have to wait. Some people I've heard have waited years. It's the same when if your agent takes you on, they then send it to an editor, you have to wait. I'm always waiting, sending stuff to my editor and waiting for people to get back to me on things. So you really have to develop your patience, otherwise it will drive you a little bit nutty. The other thing you need to do is you just need to learn how to just to dig in and persevere, and not give up. And you also need the Lord's peace, because if you let things like reviews or other people's opinions, the publishing market, tell you how to feel about what you're doing, then you're always going to be tossing and turning on that sea. I want to be like Jesus, who could sleep in the boat while the storm raged around him. And actually, if you know that being a scribe, being a writer is your calling from him, then you can derive your peace from that and your identity as a writer from that, and not what all these other voices, social media, whatever says about you. And there's a real kind of, that can really keep you anchored on your journey, when there are going to be people who leave you vicious 1-star reviews. I've had plenty. Thankfully, they're like in the tiny minority compared to the good reviews, but on the internet these days, people do not hold back. And if they don't like your book, they may well tell you exactly why they don't like your book. And you kind of just need to toughen up and not take it personally, really. But having that sense of knowing that I'm doing what I really feel the Lord wants me to do really brings that sense of peace into my journey, and just helps me keep going on even when there are setbacks. So I'm going to start off, first things first, I'll tell you how I got published to start off with. I'm going to take a sip of water first. Rightio. Back in 2004, I was working for my church in the church office. I started working for my church back in the 90s, initially making cable television programs when cable TV was really new here in the UK. That was quite creative, so I really enjoyed that. But once I had kids, that was too full on to manage, and switched to part-time working. So I started doing some of the we set up a production company, and I did a lot of the admin and organisation for that, and I kept the accounts and stuff like that, and that was really good fun too. And that's where I met Tux, because we worked together at the same church for a long time. And I think my youngest daughter had just she was about 2.5, and she just started preschool, and suddenly I had a few extra hours in my day to do something. I was just like an ordinary mum with a part-time job, going to church and just living my life. And I didn't do English at university. I didn't do a degree in English. I've had no experience in publishing in terms of my career. I actually trained in dance and did dancing for a while before I ended up moving on and working for my church. And I kind of thought writers were kind of a different breed of people. You kind of had to be special or marked out from birth in some way. I'd always loved English. I'd always written loads of stories when I was at school, and I loved doing that. And I'd written poetry when I was older. But it didn't occur to me. Well, I mean, I suppose lots of people go, oh yeah, I really want to write a book one day. And I'd kind of done that in my head, but I hadn't really thought seriously about it until I was in my mid-30s. And then one night I had a dream, and this dream gave me an idea for a love story. And I was really looking for something creative to do at the time. I've had lots of creative hobbies, but it's hard when you've got small kids because you can't, babysitters leaving the house, all that sort of thing. And I thought, oh, writing, I could do this because a lot of it just happens in my head. I can be thinking about stories and ideas while I'm doing the washing up or cooking the dinner. I don't have to go anywhere. I just need a pad and a pen and a computer, and, I can start having a go. So I have no idea why I just suddenly thought, you know what, I'm really going to do this. But I think it was God, actually. I had no idea at the time, though. I just thought it was a little random idea I had. So I dived in and I bought a book on how to write a novel, and I read it. And then eventually I started. At some point, you have to have a go. I found an online community as well. This is before Facebook and everything. I found an online message board for other writers, fiction writers, and that really helped. And I really recommend, if you don't have an online writing community, try and find people who are doing what you're doing online, because you learn so much about the industry. I learned so much about how, I had no idea how to submit to a publisher, but I did after I joined my online groups. But we also had chats about, I'm trying to do this and it's not working. How can you has anyone got any tips about how to handle this problem in terms of writing? So and I'm still great friends with some of those people now, 15 years on. So that gave me a bit of a push to think, okay, a lot of these other people, then their mums like me and they're published. So why not? Why not give it a go? Maybe I could actually get something published. I did think in the back of my head, that was probably slightly delusional, but at the same time I was having fun and I was really enjoying the writing, so I just kept going. So I did read a lot of books about writing. I really tried to improve my craft. And then by the end of the year, this is the end of 2004 at this point, I'd been writing this book for about 10 months and it just was not quite coming together. I realise now that one of the hallmarks that people would say about my books, if they leave reviews on Amazon, is that they're funny, but they're also quite emotional. And I hadn't quite worked out how to do those two together, because I had some pages where it was slapstick humor, and then a couple of pages on it was like tragic, weepy stuff. And I hadn't quite worked out how to make the two work without it all being, oh, okay, we've just switched gears completely. So I decided, with much reluctance, because I'd really fallen in love with the story and the characters, to put that story away and use what I'd learned to start a new book. And I'd had an idea for a new book, so I began writing that. And I'd got about halfway through it by the spring the following year, and I decided I need someone who knows what they're talking about to tell me if I've got any promise at all. I'd been doing critiquing online with some people, but when you're all at the same level, you don't always have a lot of great criticism or constructive criticism to give each other. So I thought, okay, well, that's not really working. I need someone who's like better than me to tell me. So I joined an organisation here in the UK called the Romantic Novelists Association, for the sole reason that they have a new writers scheme. It's limited to a certain number of places, but if you get on the scheme, and it was quite easy to do that in the year I did it. Now I think the places fill up early January, but I joined in March. You pay a little bit extra for your membership fee, and a published author will read your manuscript. And I thought, okay, this is what I need. And that also gave me a deadline. I had to hand my book in August, at the end of August. So I thought, well, that is going to make me finish the book. So I went to their conference, which was great. I was terrified though, because there were like real writers at the conference, like proper people whose names were on the books when I went to the bookshelf, and they were sitting next to me at dinner, and I hadn't even finished a proper book and sent it anywhere. I felt felt so like such a fraud. I was like, oh, there's real writers here, but they were all really, really lovely and really supportive, and I learnt loads, and that gave me loads of, oh, that was so great. I went home and finish the book, and hopefully this conference is going to give you that same boost as well, to make you excited to finish your next project. So I handed it in, and then obviously I waited, because that's what you do when you're a writer. And after about 3 weeks, the scheme organizer got back to me, and she said, the author we gave your book to really liked your book, and what we do when somebody really likes it is we get a second author to read it. She said, so I've read your book a second time. She said, I think it's really, really good. I'm going to send it to my editor at my publishing house. And she wrote for Mills and Boon in the UK, who is Harlequin in the US, in other places in the world. And I went, okay. And then I waited some more. And while I waited, at this point, I did not sleep properly for about 3 or 4 weeks. And I had no idea when they were going to get back to me. And it was terrible. I kept waking up at 3 in the morning, so excited and so nervous. I didn't know what to do with myself. And then I was going to go to the organisation's Christmas party, which was on a Wednesday evening in November of 2005. And the night before, an editor emailed me to say, I'd really like to touch base with you. Are you around for a phone call? Touch base. That is just so wonderfully vague, isn't it? But I did know, and I knew this from being on my online message board, that if an editor wants to phone call with you, it could be good news. But I didn't know for sure. So I was like, oh, and I was so nervous. I hardly slept. We set a phone call for the next morning. And by the time she phoned me, I'd gone through the jitters into a complete state of numb disbelief. And she phoned me up and she said, oh, we really love your book. I've read it all the way through. We would like to offer you a 1-book contract. And unlike a lot of other of my author friends who then jumped up and danced around the room screaming, I was very British and I went, thank you very much. And I just so got to the point where I couldn't believe it was happening, that I was the most boring person to offer a book contract to. And I was just in a complete daze. Like, oh, crikey, that happened fast. I thought to myself, I'll give this 5 years, and if I'm not getting anywhere in 5 years, then maybe I'll have a rethink. And this was about almost 2 years into having started writing completely. But only a few months did I actually sent a book anywhere or done anything with it. And then I was also hugely excited, but absolutely terrified, because I thought, well, now they're going to want me to write another book. Well, what if I can't? What if I've only got one in me? I might not be able to do it. But I kind of put those thoughts aside. And as I was travelling up on the train into London for the party that evening, I remember that I hadn't really chatted to God much about this. I'd kind of just, what had become a hobby had kind of spiraled out of control. And I thought, this isn't the most obvious route for a nice Christian girl to be publishing with Mills and Boon. I do have to say, though, my books are all very clean. Nobody ever slept with anyone outside of marriage. It's all very kind of PG-13, Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail kind of books. I wasn't going to go there. But they do publish those kind of books, as well as the kind of romances that people think they publish, which are sometimes a little bit steamier. But I was really happy writing kind of heartwarming, kind of slightly funny stories, and everything was very kind of above board. But still, I knew there was a certain reputation for the publisher in the UK. People think it's a bit cheesy, and they don't always know exactly. Yeah, they've got an idea that maybe what things were like 20, 30 years ago. It's not necessarily what it's like now. But I was chatting to God on the train as I was going up. There was a beautiful sunset. I can picture myself on the train right now, and just saying, "Okay, Lord, this has happened, and I know I was wanting it to happen, but what do I do with this? Should I be doing this? Is this from you? What do I do with it?" And I just felt a real sense of peace in my heart, and the Lord saying to me, yeah, I opened this door for you. It's okay to walk through it. So I went, okay. So I went to the party and everyone was patting me on the back and congratulations. And I spent the next couple of months in a daze, but then I had to start writing the next book. So that didn't last for long. And the first year was amazing. the first book won an award. They have a New Writers Award for the Romantic Novelists Association. So every person who has their first book published that year, they enter them all into a competition, and mine won. And I was gobsmacked because a short romance hadn't won against like a big mainstream historical book for years and years and years and years. So I felt like I was on a high, and then I got shortlisted for a big award in America, and I actually traveled to Dallas to go to a conference there. I didn't win, but it was like such an experience. And then kind of my career kind of settled into a groove. At first I was writing 2 books a year. They're quite short, they're only 50,000 words if you're writing for Mills Boon. And then yeah, so I and then I moved on to writing up to about 3 books a year. So I got faster, but I'm not by any stretch of the imagination a fast writer. I've got friends who can write 10 books a year, and I don't know how they do it without their brains exploding. But you know, I just have to go at my pace, and not worry about other people who can write way faster than I do. I think things just need to brew in my head a bit more before they come out. It's just the way I am. So. And then 2008 happens, and there's a big economic worldwide crash, which I didn't feel initially, but I did after a few years. Big bookstores in the US closed, which meant actually that a lot of my income dropped by a third, because those had been a big part of my sales. And then also things that I discovered to learn, that things move around with publishers as you go along. So Harlequin had different lines, and they were going to open a new one up. They thought, we want all our strongest writers to come on board. We're going to have this great new venture. And Fiona, we'd really like you to write for it. And I was like, oh, cool, this sounds really good. You know, I kind of, be doing okay, earning a bit of extra money, still got my part-time job. I'd cut my hours down a little bit, but, I wasn't earning. I think everyone thinks you're going to earn mega bucks once you sign a contract, but it's just, some people do, but on the average income for an author in the UK each year is £11,000, which is half of the national average. So some people earn a lot less, some people do better, and my income goes up and down over the years. So yes, so that things started to go. I thought, great, well, I'm in this new line, and I knew they were featuring me as one of, not the top author in the line, but I kind of knew, because my book was out the second month, they were doing it, that actually I was one of the people they were kind of pushing a little bit harder, and I was like, great, maybe I'll get more sales, maybe I can get my career to kind of go up to the next level. And then it kind of didn't work, their new venture. And this was no choice of mine. They had decided this is what they were going to do. So they changed the guidelines, and they wanted steamier books from everyone, and I didn't want to write them. And I went from being kind of favourite author to bottom of the heap author, and the sales got worse and worse and worse for everybody. And I thought, this line is going to close, and I'm going to end up without a publishing home. I could possibly go back to where I had been writing before, but they changed things around there as well. And I'd also got to a point of thinking, actually, I've written maybe 14, 15 of these books now. I'm ready for a new challenge. I actually wanted to write a longer story where I could have more characters, explore other themes, maybe still keep some romance in it, but actually explore other relationships, other things in the book as well. And I thought, I was really interested in bringing my faith into my books as well, which I kind of tried to sneak in. I've had like characters who were like vicars' wives at, really kind of happy clappy churches and things like that. And but I wasn't really had to talk about it that much. So I started investigating. My publisher in Harlequin in the US had just started to publish a line called what is it called? I can't remember what the line was called now. Anyway, it was what's called inspirational fiction, or an inspirational romance. So it's Christian romance, basically. That has now, 15 years on, become one of their best-selling lines in the country, and other ones of their imprints have like folded and closed, and this one keeps growing. But I discovered that when I tried to push against that door, that it was not budging for me. partly because it was a very American-based line and I'm British, and they wanted small town America stories with American characters, and I just really wasn't sure I could pull that off. And I think there's a lot of me and my Britishness in my voice and my stories, and I thought, I think I'm going to lose some of my writing personality if I try to be something I'm not. And there's nobody publishing stuff like that in the UK. There's more variety out there now. And I thought, well, this is really disappointing. I'd really like to write something more like that. And I was talking to one of my friends about this, my best friend, and she, I said, I really want to write a Christian book. And she said, you know what, Fiona, your books do have like that godly foundation in them. It might not be overt. And she said, the way you write is so conversational and relatable that actually people would read your books who had never set foot inside the door of a church. And I thought, yeah, she's right. So I started praying about that, and saying, Lord, you know what's on my heart, what I want to do. What do your take on it? And I really felt he kind of talked to me about salt and light, that for some writers that he calls, he wants you to be light. He wants you to declare Jesus loudly, to shine him out from the top of a hill. But when we're salt in the world, we season it, we're in the middle of it, we add flavor to it, we bring our I suppose salt is also a preservative, isn't it? So we bring life and kind of we stop the decay in the society. And I really felt God was saying to me, I don't want you to switch. I've put you where I want you. But I want you to write stories that are filled with me, that will go out to people who are not Christians, who need to hear messages of hope, who just need good stories that are based on godly, healthy themes and principles. And so I was like, okay, I can do that. I still wanted to write something bigger though. So I was planning, what can I do? How can I do that? I was going to finish my current contract. They were quite often for 3 books at a time, and I thought, when I finish that contract, I'm going to take a bit of a break, or ask for a slightly longer deadline, and in that I'm going to start trying to write a longer mainstream fiction book, which is actually what I really wanted to do right from the start. But Meals and Boon had been my opportunity to squeeze my toe in the door and get into the industry. And just as I was thinking about doing that, and this must have been October 2012, so we're 7 years on now from when I was first published, or first got my first contract, one of the editors at Harlequin phoned me up and said, we're launching a new rom-com women's fiction publishing line, mainstream, because we want to show readers that we're not just these tiny little books with a romance in, that we do more, and we want to attract more people to our publisher. Would you like a 2-book contract to write longer books? And I practically bit her hand off, because that was just God. It was what was on my heart to do. And I was thinking, how am I going to juggle the time to do all of this? We'll move all your deadlines. Don't worry about it. And I really felt God had opened that door for me when the timing was right. And I also felt that God was doing that because all the way along it's very easy when people like what you do sometimes to get a bit of a big head and to forget that you're not supposed to be taking the glory. You're supposed to be giving it to him. And so along the way, I kept coming back and saying, Lord, I don't mind if I don't I'd love to hit a bestseller list or do something like that. But if it doesn't happen, I don't mind. I'm doing this for you. I'm just being obedient to you. And I felt God had got me into a place where my heart was in the right place. And when I was ready for that, then he opened the door. So I think that's quite an important thing. If you want to go to the next level, you have to keep checking your motives and make sure it's hard with creative stuff like this when you can get a lot of praise and things. You have to keep making sure that you're humble, that you're doing it for the right reasons, and that you're going to give the glory to him, and not kind of take it for yourself and do all of that kind of thing. So I then had to come up with an idea for a book. I also decided I needed a literary agent because there wasn't much to negotiate on the contracts for my small romances, but I knew that there would be things that an agent could negotiate for me, better terms, more money for in advance, and just somebody who would understand the contracts and the publishing process that was going to be slightly different now. It was a slightly different publishing model. With Harlequin, one of the joys of it is when you're a new author, you get exactly the same contract as everybody else, even somebody else who's written 200 books and is a multi-million bookseller. You get the same contract. When it comes to commercial fiction, it's not that case. And I wanted someone who's a bit of an expert to give me advice. So I went on the absolutely terrifying process of finding a literary agent, and I did. And actually, the agent I thought was going to be my dream agent offered to represent me. And I was again like, oh my goodness, this all could be happening now. And I wrote my first book, and she came. They wanted a Christmas book. Christmas romances sell very, very well in the UK. You know, even they're full of snow and everything, even though it hardly ever snows here at Christmas. But everyone just likes to buy into the fantasy that it's like that. So we'd love you to write a Christmas book for us. So my agent came up with an idea about two sisters, very different, who swap Christmases. And I thought, great. And the more I thought it, I thought, oh, I know two sisters in the Bible who are very different. So I went Bible studying Martha and Mary, and kind of I based my characters off those two. And that was really good fun. So I had one who was a little bit uptight and, you know, single mum of four, who completely frazzled. And then one who was a total free spirit who had like a glamorous job in film and wafted around the world doing what she liked, really. And then I made them swap over. So one of them went on a Caribbean holiday for Christmas, and the other one had to stay home with the kids and cook the turkey. And it was a fun book to write. But I also wanted themes about, I don't know if any of you have got sisters. I have one sister and two stepsisters. There's lots of sister drama in my family. And so I know kind of how difficult family relationships can be, and how sometimes people get stuff into their head from their childhood that follows them through to adulthood, and sometimes you just need to let some of it go. So I wanted to write about that. So these two sisters didn't get each other at the beginning of the book, and I really wanted a theme of kind of forgiveness, about compassion, about being able to see something from somebody else's point of view and understand them, and how that can bring healing and forgiveness. And so that's why I put in the book. And I was really blessed, and I prayed about this, and I Bible studied, and I had little verses that were my inspiration that didn't necessarily come out in the book, but I used them as kind of fuel for me. And I was really pleased when somebody said to me, I've just finished your book. She said, you know what, that sister I don't get on with, I'm going to give her another chance. Yes. So it was really pleased. And I got other comments like that, people saying, you know what, yeah, maybe I do need to think differently about my family relationships and things. And I think this is what I'd been hoping for at this point, that somehow by praying about it and really seeking God when I wrote my books, that something would be released from it where people would catch that without even knowing that they caught a bit of God. And that's kind of really what I've been trying to do recently. So that book did fairly well. It sold a reasonable amount in the UK, not bestseller by any stretch, but it was an okay number for a first book. It didn't flop. It kind of sat in the middle. And so I was quite excited, and I wrote the next one, and which was actually, oh, here we go. Look, that's my Christmas book, Make My Wish Come True. That wasn't my title. I hated the title, but they wouldn't let me have a different one. But I did like the cover. So next book was that one up there, the blue one. I think I'm going to knock them down if I get it down, called The Little Shop of Hopes and Dreams. And that again sold pretty much the same until they decided to put it on offer on Nook, which was the Barnes and Noble Kindle like version of Kindle, and they decided to put it on offer for 19p, and it was going to be on 19p for 2 weeks. And I got very excited because that is very low price for a book. Now I'm earning like fractions of pennies from books that sells, but actually sometimes you do that to get the visibility, to if your book will go up the charts on Amazon, then more people buy it, and it's good promo, which is why publishers do it. Anyway, somebody at Nook forgot to put the price back up to the normal price, and Amazon price matched, and so my book was 19p for 3 months, and after 2 weeks it went to the #1 spot on Kindle in the UK, and it stayed in the top 20 until they put the price back up. Amazing. selling ebooks in the UK that year. I was just gobsmacked. I mean, it didn't necessarily mean lots of financial reward for me. It helped, because when you sell 150,000 books at a tiny fraction, it kind of, it does build up a bit. So it was okay, but you know, I was probably taking home like 5p a book, if that, probably more like 2 or 1. But that was, I thought, okay, great. And I had another book that was just about to come out, because the way the publishing schedule had worked, although it was coming out 6 months after the previous one. And I was like, okay, this is the one that's going to do it. And the supermarkets didn't pick this one up. Only one supermarket picked up. In the UK, if you want to sell volumes of books, supermarkets is where you do it. Yeah, that book tanked. Nobody really knew why. We thought it was a really great concept. We thought it had kind of vintage theme, which was really in the UK at the time. Yeah, no, I don't know whether it was a cover, whether it was something else. So that book sold maybe only a quarter of what the previous book had, 2 books had sold. And then what you happen is you end up in a position where retailers, when they're looking at your next book, they look at the sales of your previous book to decide whether they're going to take you on. And this is particularly true of supermarkets, who really just want something that's going to make them lots of money. You know, whether that's a can of olive oil, or you know, tuna, or bananas, or whatever, or books. They don't really care. They just want a sure bet when it comes to putting it on the shelf. And the bookshelves in the supermarkets are shrinking and shrinking, and the places are getting fewer and fewer. So they want their celebrity memoirs and their bestsellers, you know, or something that they really think is going to shoot and sell really, really well. So I ended up having what's called bad track in the industry, which is when a bad track record, in that I then wrote another book, and publishers looked at the sales figures of my vintage book, and they went, yeah, no, not publishers, retailers looked at and so they just decided not to stock it. And it's very difficult to sell print books if nobody stocks them. You do sell some on Amazon, but not much. And so therefore that book didn't sell very well. And at this point, I was thinking, okay, we need to shake things up a bit. What's going wrong here? And I was thinking about what I wanted to write. In the UK at the time, if you wanted to write romantic comedies, everything was about cupcakes and stilettos and seaside towns, all kind of fantasy. And I thought, that's great, and I could jump on that bandwagon, but I feel like I've written loads of books like that when I was writing for Mills and Boon, and I wanted to do something different. And I thought, you know, I want to write something where I can deal with some meatier emotional issues, maybe. So I was thinking hard about an idea I had. At the same time, I was writing my very first, went back to my notebooks to it, that was based on the idea of 1 Corinthians 13, about how it talks about love is patient, love is kind, those things, and how often in relationships don't love people like that. We're mean, and we're rude, and we're selfish. Kind of write a book that talks where Mark learned love better, and I wanted it to be about a married story, and I really wanted to write this book. So in the end, that's what I did. It was a bit of a chance. I submitted the idea to my editor, and she said, I love it, write it. So I was really pleased I had her support, and they just didn't say, oh no, we want more of the same from you, Fiona, because I was ready to do something different. And I was really excited about this book, and I really felt God's hands on it when I was writing it. He gave me, like, sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night with a really great idea. Always have pen and paper by your bed, or a voice recorder, or your phone. I had, a couple of weeks ago, I had to sneak into the bathroom with my phone to record ideas so I didn't wake my husband up. Those are my best ideas I get in the middle of the night. I think the Holy Spirit suddenly wakes me up, prods me. Come on, I've got one for you. So I wrote the book, and I was really excited, and I just had, the final copy was in, and it was edited, and my agent dropped me. I just phoned her up to say, I emailed to say, can we have a chat about the next book I'm going to write? And she says, yeah, come in for a meeting, we'll have a meeting. And then I didn't hear anything for 2 weeks, and then she phoned me up and said, I don't think I should represent you anymore. she'd had a really, really huge success with one of her authors. I think she was huge. I mean, she was hugely, hugely busy, and she said, "I don't have the time for everyone anymore, and I feel like, listen, for you, I need to kind of." Now, I totally understood that. Nobody wants to dispensable author at the bottom of your authors list that they can lose. So that was a real knock to my confidence, especially as I just got this book in that I really loved. And then I had no agent at all, no direction about what should I do next. So my confidence, I cried a lot about that. And then I had to go set about finding a new agent. So I approached, because I was in the middle of a contract. That book was the first. The next book would also be under that same contract. My initial agent would earn the money from both books, and it would be at least a year, if not two, before they'd be able to sign a publisher where they'd get paid. And for small agencies who don't, some of them just couldn't afford. And I got turned down by a couple of people. I did not choose the timing of this. Brave face on it and not say she fired me. And how do you say that in an email? Like, I'm parting, agent, and why? And I didn't, think I'd been a problem, or I'd always been really cooperative and polite and worked really hard at things. I didn't want them to think I was a nightmare. Someone hired me because I was a nightmare. Eventually I did find another agent. I'm still with her, and oh my goodness, my first was great, and I don't think she's a bad agent at all, but I think we weren't the right fit. I don't think she loved my writing. My new agent loves my writing, and she's like a cheerleader and a champion for me. And so I just want to say to you, if any of you get offers from agents, it's so tempting to bite the hand off the first person who asks you. But actually, this is a working relationship, and you need to know this person's going to work well for you. And you also need to do your homework and make sure you're not signing up with somebody scammy as well. Like, any agent asks you for money, run in the other direction. It's not how it works in traditional publishing. Same if you're doing traditional publishing, your publisher should not be asking you for any money. That's normally a sign of someone who's just about to fleece you and run in the other direction and leave you to do all the marketing yourself, because that's all they're going to do, is charge you a lot of money for your books, and then they're not going to do anything because they're rubbing their hands and walking off to the bank. So I keep having to tell people this on social media at the moment. They ask me about it, so I thought I'd mention that. Anyway, so I wrote my next book, which I was really pleased about. And again, but the problem of the bad track was following me around like a bad smell, because even though retailers would look at the covers of the book and think, we love the cover, we love the concept, and then they'd look back at the sales of those previous books I wrote and go, yeah, no. And so I wrote another couple of books as Fiona Harper, and it's just, we could not push through, because you just get stuck in a vicious cycle. No one stocks your books because of the previous book, and then of course that book doesn't sell because no one's stocking your book. And the ebook sales were pretty decent for those two books, but again, nothing to set the world on fire. And so I was out of contract then as well. So at that point I think, okay, I need to write a new proposal, I need to write a new book. Just as I was about to send in my book that I'd been working on, an idea that my agent said, yeah, I really like that, start writing that, have a few chapters and we'll send it into your editor. My editor left, and they didn't replace her for a couple of months. So I sent my partial manuscript in, 25,000 words, so it's about a quarter of a book for me, because mine are about 100,000 words now. And then the editorial director got back to me and went, not quite. You might need to talk about it when your new editor comes on board. So I spent January to March writing this. I then chatted to my agent. She said, well, we need to make it more, they're saying it needs a bigger hook of the story, you need to make it more commercial. This was a new editorial director at the publisher, and during this time, I forgot to say this, Harlequin got bought out by HarperCollins, and I'd always wanted to write for like one of the big 5 publishers, and suddenly I was, and I hadn't even changed publishing house. It's like, how's that for God just lining things up for you, that I kind of just slid in because I was already, and where I get my contracts from has changed now, and they kind of separated a little bit now, but I'm now firmly writing for HarperCollins rather than Harlequin. And I was like, cool, that's really cool. It's just like, could never have known that, but God knew that was coming up. So I rewrite the book, another 12,000 words. We keep one tiny idea from the first book, ditch the rest. I send it back to my agent. We're now June of the same year, so it's 6 months and I haven't got a new contract yet. And no contract means no money. You know, this is now my full-time income as well. Thankfully I'd saved. So I have like savings. Because you need them in this business sometimes. So we reworked the book again, sent it to my new editor in September. She got back to me in October. Did I tell you about the waiting? Yeah, and she said, it's still not quite. It had a bit of a mystery in it, as well as kind of women's fiction, so kind of women's relation, 3 women, but there was like a murder in the past and a bit of a mystery about something. And she was like, we're not quite sure how to market it, you know. And I was like, okay. She said, if you rewrite it like this, we could do it like that, and if we write it like this, we could market it like this person's books. I thought, if they make me rewrite that book again, I'm just going to lie down and cry. I really had fallen out of love with it by that point. But my editor said to me, you know, we really loved The Other Us. That was my kind of my 1 Corinthians 13 story, which also turned to have a bit of time travel and alternate realities in it, just, you know, as you do. And she said, we really love that because it was a love story but with a real twist to it. Could you write us something else like that? And I thought, yeah, maybe. I haven't got any ideas at the moment. And then I started seeing things about Frankfurt Book Fair was saying kind of big love stories are back in, and another publisher approached my agent saying, if Fiona was able to write an epic love story for us, we'd really love to see it. Okay, there's a theme starting here. Maybe I need to stop trying to kill people off in the books, which I was really desperate to do for some reason. I think just writing a bit of mystery was just like something fresh. I thought, okay, I can do a love story, but if I could do one that's not just boy meets girl, that's got a twist to it, that's something different, then yeah, maybe I can do that. And as this was happening, I'm going to try and do this quickly. I noticed there's another author I knew who had signed a big contract, and her book was selling great guns. I was really pleased with her because she's lovely. But then they announced what her next book was going to be, and it was really similar to my book, The Other Us. And she was being offered 6-figure deals in Germany and stuff like this. And I'm thinking, that's my idea. I can't sell a book this year. I'm earning nothing. And she's getting like, you know, £100,000 book deals. Like, I was just like, I just had a real pity party. I was like, I just had, everything's gone wrong. Just had a real moan to myself. And I went to bed that night and I couldn't sleep properly because I quite often don't sleep when I'm stressed. And I was praying about it. I was chatting to God in the middle of the night saying, Lord, what's going on? You know, I don't necessarily I didn't begrudge the other author her success, but I was thinking, I was expecting to at least go upwards rather than downwards. You know, what's happening? What do I need to do? Tell me what's on your heart for me. And I'd seen an idea in a magazine about someone who'd lost their memory. And during the night, when I was waking up and praying and going back to sleep and dreaming, I then had an idea for a story based on amnesia, not the same as what I'd seen in the magazine article, but something different. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. And I just felt like it was a God dream or a God idea in the middle of the night. So I started writing that one. My agent for some reason, wasn't replying to me. I think she was busy with something for a couple of weeks. And so when we got back together, she said, "I'll put together a few ideas as well as this one for me, and we'll see which one works the best." So this was the 4th book I'd started writing in 2018. And when she saw my list of ideas, she said, "Oh, I like that, but I really like this one better." I went, oh. So I ditched that book and I started another one. I couldn't quite work out how to make the idea work, because I wanted it to be, it came from an idea of partly when my father-in-law died when I was younger, that how my mother-in-law kept his voice on her answer phone, partly because she liked the idea of people thinking there was a man in the house, but to hear his voice. So I thought about this, about how much would you give if you could just have one more conversation with somebody you've lost and you didn't know you were going to lose them, and how much would you just want to be able to say all those things you could never say, that one more talk with someone who died. And yeah, I'm getting emotional because I think about my mum, because she died a couple of years before that, and I was thinking, oh, how much would it be nice to talk to my mum again. And but every time I did it, so I had an idea that she'd call his phone and listen to his voicemail message, but one time someone would talk back, but I didn't want it to be like a spirit, like a dead person talking to her. So I didn't know how to work the story out, although I liked the initial idea. And my agent said to me, well, it doesn't have to be the dead husband she's talking to, does it? What if his number's been reassigned and she ends up talking to somebody different? I went, that is a book I can write. So that's the book I started to write. But because I was out of contract, I did not have what's called an option clause in my contract. Normally, your publisher has a little clause in your contract to say they get first look at whatever you write next. Mine didn't have it. So my agent said, right, I think HQ, who is my publisher, they're being a bit lackluster about you at the moment. Let's put a fire underneath them. I'm going to tell them I'm sending it to other people as well, because there's no option clause in your contract. I went, okay. So we got some interest from a couple of other editors, and she's come January 2019, I had 25,000 words of this new book out, done and dusted and ready to go, and she sent it out to all the publishers. And my current publisher, who was like, I'm done with them now, I'm leaving, I just want to go somewhere new where they're really going to push me. Because what nobody tells you when you're traditionally published is there are different tiers of authors. The A tier authors get 90% of the marketing budget. The B tier authors get 10% of the marketing budget. So the A tier authors are the ones who hit the bestseller lists and sell loads of books, because it really does come down to that in traditional publishing. The B tier, which is kind of where I'd been most of the time, you get 10% of the marketing budget and the rest you have to do on yourself. And the C tier at the bottom get no marketing budget, and it's kind of up to you to do your own marketing. I've been a C author at times as well, so I'd always been B and C, never been A. And I thought, yeah, I want one of these other publishers who, some of the editors that I've worked with, because they'd worked at my old publisher and moved out of the places, and I knew they liked my writing and they'd wanted to work with me. So I thought, okay, maybe I can get like to be an A tier author and get a chance of maybe going to the next level. So surprisingly enough, it was my current publisher who said, don't show it to anybody else. We want Fiona to come in for a meeting. I went, a meeting? I've never been into the office for a meeting when they wanted to buy one of my books before. They would just email me. Okay, so we set it up. My agent and I went into this big skyscraper next to the Shard in London. And I went into this room, and I kid you not, there was breakfast. Like pastries, orange juice, coffee, fresh fruit. I was like, what's happening? Like nobody ever. And then the head of marketing comes in, the editorial director comes in, the executive publisher is there. I'm like looking at my agent, and she's just like, keep cool, Fiona, keep cool. She's sending me the vibes. I'm like, okay, this has never happened before. And they pull out this huge presentation of how much they love the book, and they want to make it one of their lead titles the following year, and all their marketing plans for it and things like this. And I'm just like gobsmacked. And then they bring the CEO of HarperCollins in, who sits down and tries to convince me to sign the contract with them. And I was just like that. I was just like that. And so I went and had coffee with my agent afterwards, and I was like, did that actually just happen? She said, yes, it did. She said, and I knew when they brought Charlie, who was the CEO, in, I knew when they brought him in, they were serious. This is really good. And they had made an offer of an advance that was twice my previous advance. But my agent said, we can do better than that. So she did. She got me 3 times my previous advance, and which is still not mega bucks. And actually, it's more on par with some of the other authors like me at the publisher. I'd been on really tiny ones from the beginning when they were trying something new, and we managed to push them up a bit. But then when the books weren't selling that well, nobody wants to pay you more. So I'm like, okay, at least I'm on an even playing field with some of the other authors like me at the publishers. But because my book has a New Year's, it starts on New Year's Eve, they said we haven't got the time to do the publicity we want to do for it for this new year. So we're going to publish it Christmas 2021 in ebook and audio, and then March 2022 in print. So while that all happens like a year and a half ago or more, I'm still waiting for the book to come out. I've just finished writing it because they took ages to get to me editing it, and they keep sending it back. Can you change a little bit of this? I've noticed now that when they really want to push your book, they make you work a lot harder with the editing, which wasn't fun. And I have sometimes I'm like, oh, that suggestion's stupid, but I do it anyway. I save my battles for the things I really don't want to do, and if I'm not in a big snit about it. So it's weird that I often find that when it comes to coming up to the next level, it's those times where it looks like everything has gone wrong are normally the times like God has used it to make me think, okay, maybe I need to write something better. And actually, when you push against those obstacles, God uses it as a refining process to there's been things as me as a person he's needed to deal with, so I need a little bit more maturity to handle stuff before he then promotes me. And sometimes it's stuff to do with my writing, about listening to him, about really focusing, like, what do you want me to do, Lord, rather than just coasting along and doing the same old thing. But I really want to encourage you that sometimes when you meet those blocks, that's your opportunity to grow. And if you listen to the Lord and you take that journey with him, and don't give up, because it's so easy to just get discouraged and give up in this business. I really feel that it's easy to look at reviews and online things, and we have an advantage over other authors and other writers out there because we have a partner. We have the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and we're not on our own on that roller coaster. He's sitting next to us, and he will hold your hand when you're scared, and he will whisper words of peace to you when you're oh, what's happening, and he will then, cheer you on when you're reaching the highs, and he will let you know what's happening. And when you're rooted in him in the journey, it becomes much harder to just go, oh, I'm giving up, because this is who I am. I feel like this is who he made me to be, and I can't stop. Even if the publishing contracts disappeared, I keep writing. And I may or may not ever hit like one of the Sunday Times bestseller lists. I would really like to. That would be cool. But if people keep talking back to me and saying, like with the other Us, it was about marriage, they said, you know what? That's really made me think about my life and appreciate it more, and I'm going to be better at doing things. People are writing this in my Amazon reviews, that this really made me think about my life and how I'm doing things and my mindset. I think, if 1 or 2 people per book, if God can change their lives through reading what I've written, then I'm good with that. But and that's what it's about, really. It's about bringing Jesus to people, and I've just found God just got me to do it in a really sneaky way, by sticking God into my books, and so people don't know they're getting God. But lots of people say to me, there's something about that book that just makes me, it lifted my heart, it made me let go of some stuff, and I'm always seeking a way to be more overt with things, but at the moment this is where I am. And so that's my journey. I want to say, don't give up. It's an up and down ride no matter what you're doing, and you just have to remember you're not on your own on the roller coaster, that he's with you and he will guide you and he will promote you in his time, so you have to be patient. And have we got time for questions? I've completely lost track of the time. Just about, because I'm like,
just about. Wow, awesome. Applause. Let's see that in the chat. That was, I could just go on and on listening to you, Fiona. I mean, wow, I wrote quite a few things here. Look at the journey. Oh my God. And it started with a dream. You had a dream.
I know. And I would say about myself, I've got friends who have like, oh, I had another dream, and I was like, God doesn't really do that with me that much. Or maybe he does. And I just don't realize.
Yeah.
And there are times where, I'm just praying in the morning, and then I look at, I go to work, and suddenly I have an idea. Is it from me? Is it from the Holy Spirit? I don't know, but I'm grateful for them when they come sometimes, because sometimes those the ideas that come out the blue seem to be the best ones. So that's kind of, it's definitely interesting. But I think you just have to be, I've been learning, and I've been doing courses. There are some places that do courses about really learning to co-create with the Holy Spirit,
Mm-hmm.
like to really listen to that sense of inspiration. And I think if you develop your prophetic gifting, it seems to help with the creative gifting as well. I think I've got more prophetic the more I've allowed.
Wow.
I think the two go hand in hand. The more as I've learned to kind of receive from him and be accurate more in prophecy, the more I seem to be able to receive and be accurate in creativity. And which one sparks the other one, or whether it's just a chicken and the egg situation, I really don't know.
Now that is just so beautiful. You've really blessed us in many ways. I wrote many other things. She bought a book, online messaging group. She was part of a group. She just kept on going. I kept on going. I read books. I read books about writing. And then she went into another level where she was not being critiqued just by her own peers, but she now got a mentor to critique her, and to do that, you have to position yourself in a place where you can receive that correction or their opinions. And then yes, you went to a conference. You are in a conference. I believe it's happening. I believe it's happening.
I go to as many writing conferences as I can.
Awesome.
And do. I love them. So yeah, as much as you can soak up, I think is good.
I mean, I think I wrote it in our brochure. I went to a conference in the States, and I realized you can write a calendar of conferences if you want to go 12 conferences in a year. And where are the conferences in Nigeria? That's how Writing to Inspire started. I mean, you just want to be around writers. You just want to be in the atmosphere.
Yeah, because it can be lonely.
It can be lonely as a writer, indeed. And then open doors, timing, and then heart issues. All right, let's open it up. Thank you so much, Fiona. I cannot thank you enough. Oh my, I'm so blessed, so blessed. All right.
I used to be really shy as a child, but you can tell I'm not anymore.
Not anymore, definitely
God has worked on me.
And I love what you said about, people can easily just come to conclusion, oh, she's writing for Meals and Boom. But, thank you for just
I got a lot of stick
up
for that, but...
Yeah, but God opened the door and you went in. All right, do we have questions? Because this session with the last session, you just want to just go and soak in. Let's see if we have questions on here. Wow. Okay. And I know some secretaries are helping. If you can throw me those questions up as well. Okay, so there's one here. How much influence do traditional publishers have over your book? I think she did mention that. Yeah. You mentioned the time they don't like the title of your book and you had to agree with them. Quite difficult.
Yeah, when I wrote for Mills and Boon, I had very little choice. They had very strict branding that they stuck to. And I could not come up with a title for 1.5 titles in 18 books I kept. But when it came to my other books, some of those titles have been mine, and then sometimes I had one last year that ended up being called The Memory Collector because it was about someone who was a compulsive hoarder, but I couldn't we were going to call it The Lost Daughter because it was about, also there was a child who went missing in it, but someone else came out with a book called The Lost Sister, and it was coming out, wouldn't have been too terrible, but it was being released the same month as mine. So we ended up looking for something different, and actually I preferred the next title that we came up with. I liked it even more. I felt it stood out more. So nowadays it's more like a negotiation that you have to look at what titles are selling well. Like in my genre, what titles are doing well, what are readers picking up off the shelf, what can I use my title to say, if you liked that book that sold really well, you're going to like this one as well. So sometimes you have to be a little savvy and play to the market forces, and choose a title that is going to reflect, because the book's not just for you. You want readers to pick it up and buy it and love it. And if they've liked something similar, or you think, oh, I write like this person. So like my book, The Other Us, after because I'm not mirrored in the computer, I can't work out which way to point. There's a book that did really well here in the UK and the States called Me Before You, and loads of women's fiction books after that all had me, you, us in the titles. So that's why that one ended up being called The Other Us, although it fit the book really, really well. So that was my title for it. And yes, that kind of sometimes you need to give a nod to something else. Think, if you liked her book, I write a bit like her, I'll make my title and my cover, the cover's a little bit similar. So you can, and as an independently published author, I see this all the time, that people will make sure their covers look like other people in their genre who are doing really well. So readers know, oh, it's that kind of book. And then they'll go and check it out and read the blurb and see if they like it. So yes, it's a negotiation nowadays. And I normally come up with something we're happy with, but initially I had no say so at all. But it depends on your publisher and what your relationship with them is, I think.
Well, thank you for that. Now this is an interesting one. Okay, if I can get back to it. Just 1 second. It says, how do you, no, this question is just coming in thick and fast, Fiona. So let me look for the one I was going to read to you. Oh, have I gone all the way to the top? Okay, let's come down. If you can post me the one on the question about gays.
Oh, I can see that.
You can see that. Okay, if you can answer that,
yeah.
Then thank you.
I suppose at the moment.
If you can read out the question. Can you read out the question?
Yeah. Shall I read it out? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gone now. Oh no, here we go. How do you boycott putting gay topics in your book, especially at this time of inclusion and rights first? At the moment, I haven't actually run up against this. I haven't put gay characters in my books, but I suppose it's something that I might come up with in the future. I mean, the thing is, it's difficult because I don't write for a Christian publisher. I mean, in where I live in Southeast London, it's a bit of a melting pot. You meet a bit of everybody here. And so, yes, do I come across gay people in my life? Yes, I do. Some of my daughter's friends are gay and things like that. So I believe God loves them, and I wouldn't necessarily want to like be hateful to anybody like that. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want to promote it. So it's quite a fine line. I haven't run up against it yet. But I'm thinking that I will. So I'm kind of praying about it at the moment and just trying to work out how would I do that. I don't think I would ever write a book with one of the major characters who was gay, because that's just not me and what I write. And if I'm writing love stories, that's not the kind of thing I write. And I don't think my publisher would expect me to. It's not my brand, in a sense. So yeah, interesting question, and I don't really have an answer for you, but it's one I think we all need to be thinking about. I mean, I would like to handle it gracefully and not be really negative to somebody, but at the same time, I don't want to write something that I don't want to write. And so, but then I suppose when it came down to when I was writing for Mills and Boon, even though I didn't write books that they basically had a closed bedroom door, other writers in my line, the characters would sleep together. And I found a way to make sure it never happened. I would have to work out plots, so I didn't have to compromise what I felt to be right when I was writing. So I wasn't going to have characters having sex before marriage, and even if that would have been what everybody else around would have been doing, I found ways to maneuver around it and be creative with solutions. And I expect this is probably what I'll have to do going forwards. But yes, interesting.
Interesting. And as you're saying that, I was saying, oh, is this a question for you? Like you said, you've been thinking about it as well. And I love the fact, not just as you answered this, but also throughout your journey, how you've just brought things to the Lord, and you know, and he's guided you through. And I'm sure he will guide you through this as well if you do come against it. Okay. Well, I've saw this question to us. Can you tell us any good online community for Christian writers? The Scribal Hub. Okay, now. Or Christian conferences. Well, you can talk about the UK, but yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously, we're kind of, this is a great community to be part of. In the UK, there's an association of Christian writers, which I'm a member of. So I go to their meetings, and they also have an online presence as well. But I go to like a local meeting in Bromley. So it's really lovely to meet other Christians writing in my area. And I don't know, I mean, I think you will have to research what's available where you live. But there are quite often online communities, and Facebook I find is the best place to find groups of people. I'm quite a member of quite a lot of Facebook groups for writers at different stages of their careers, and that's where you can join a group and have big long conversations about things, and I get loads of good info about current stuff going on in the industry from that. So I would start looking for searching for groups on Facebook, although those are mostly my traditionally published author friends I chat with, because I've got the Christian contacts that I actually meet with face to face, which is really nice. But yeah, I'm sure they're out there, and there are various churches in the US that have creative ministry schools where they do dance and writing, and they quite often have online groups as well, or an online courses. So it's a case of checking, doing a bit of googling, checking out and seeing what you think is a good fit for you, because people like different flavors. We don't all like the same stuff, so some things might be a good fit for one person, not for someone else.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And of course, an open invitation to everyone. If you're not yet part of the Scribal Club, join us. We are on Facebook as well. I think we have another 5 minutes if there are still more questions. And if you can throw them up, that would be great. How do you know how much space to give to writing a novel? I've had a raw and unfinished one for years now, and I'm blank on the storyline.
Space as in time to give to writing a novel, or in terms of creating the...
It's not clear on that. If you can give a bit more clarity on that, if you can.
I can talk about, I make myself write.
Yeah.
And one thing, and I think Pedro said this before, is like, you just have to make yourself do it some days. Like, the inspiration does not hit every day. If I waited for inspiration to feel like writing before I wrote, I would get very little accomplished, because I'm terrible procrastinator. So my trick is, I don't have it here. I have a kitchen timer, or you can use an app on your phone, and I make myself write for at least 20-minute sessions this morning, and I make myself sit down, and I'm allowed to do anything else. No checking internet, no looking at Twitter, nothing. I sit, right, and actually I find once I've got through the first 10 or 20 minutes, I'm then on a roll and I can keep going. But I have to do something to make myself sit down and start, and it's horrible. The first 10 minutes I'm like, I don't like this is horrible, this is the worst thing I've written, which it doesn't really matter, because that's what editing's for, tidying things up. And then, but once I kind of get those creative wheels going, the next 10 minutes are, oh, okay, oh, what's the time? Oh, I've still got another 15 minutes, never mind, it's going a bit better. And then by the time I get to 20 minutes, the timer goes, and I'm like, where did the last 10 minutes go? So I've really found that actually, if you can just make yourself sit, hands on keyboard or pen in hand, whichever way you do it, or I sometimes dictate as well, so microphone on, and just do it. And I try and set aside certain times, like when my kids were little, I would write during the swimming lessons from the side of the pool. You know, if it's a priority, then you have to find ways to carve it into your schedule. Now I can write full time. I spend a lot more time just shilly-shallying around, and then my deadline gets closer and I start to panic and I start writing. So if anyone's got a really good tip on how to write more at the beginning of the process, I'd like to know too.
Awesome. Wow, thank you so much for that. We probably will be able to take just one more. It's really been such a
Oh,
powerful
someone said
session.
30-minute timer. I just saw someone said, how did I long to set my timer? 30 minutes. I
30
started
minute
to think
timer.
of 45 minutes, but I find 30 minutes is good for me, because I can always think, oh, I can write for half an hour. Occasionally I set it for 15 minutes if I'm feeling really like foggy headed, but even then I think I can write for 15 minutes, you know, and then I'll get up and have a cup of tea, and nearly always I keep writing. So it's just tricking myself into starting.
Awesome. Let me see if I can get this last one up. It says, I used to write at a time and for a very small group, but I got discouraged because I noticed they weren't reading, though the few that read them testified they were good. So my question is, how do I better myself and keep encouraging me?
I think it really is that is just keeping plugged into the Lord and keeping him part of your writing process, and not getting your sense of worth as a writer from all those outside voices like reviews and other people's opinions. We really need to kind of, you know, we're loved, we're accepted, we're created in his image, and he's given us specific giftings, and I know this is what one of the gifts he's given me, and I enjoy using it, and I know that he smiles on me when I create, even though I'm still learning. We're all still learning, we can always improve, but as his children he loves us, and if you can keep that at your core, it just gives you that lift you need, and that you know, to just block out the negativity. And sometimes the negativity is inside our own heads, like who would want to read what I write? And that's lies, because God's created you. If you've got this calling on your life, then that's a voice that's not from God.
True.
In your head, but that could be your own voice, it could be the enemy's voice, I don't care which. You don't have to listen to it. You can say, I believe God has called me to do this, I'm going to be obedient, and you can just tell it to take a hike. So sometimes it's just a case of not listening to those negative opinions wherever they come from.